In the small town of Clearwater, two men stood out. Henry was wealthy, living in a grand house at the hill's crest. Paul, on the other hand, was poor, residing in a humble shack at the valley's base. Despite their social differences, the two men shared a bond. They were both ardent drinkers and inseparable friends. Their friendship was built over many evenings spent together. They would sit on Henry's porch, sipping whiskey and sharing dreams. Henry respected Paul's wit and resilience. Paul admired Henry's success and generosity. The bottle was their common ground, their escape from the world's troubles. However, beneath the laughter, there were whispers of discontent. Paul envied Henry's wealth but never showed it. Henry, although generous, looked down upon Paul's poverty.
Henry, why don't we start our own distillery? We both love to drink. Why not make our own whiskey? We could sell it and make a fortune. I have the land and you have the capital. Together, we can make this work. Narrator. Henry looked intrigued. Paul continued.
Henry nodded, convinced by Paul's passion. They spent the next few hours discussing their plan. Henry agreed to fund the project. He believed in Paul's vision. Paul managed the operations. They to their future success, their glasses clinking with dreams and promises. The next day, Henry handed Paul a substantial amount of money. It was enough to keep the distillery up and running. In Paul was absolute. Little did he know that this was the beginning of the end. With the money in hand, Paul felt invincible. He dreamt of not just a successful distillery, but a better life. Instead of purchasing distillery equipment, Paul squandered the money. He bought expensive clothes and threw extravagant parties. His humble shack turned into a hub of revelry. Paul justified his spending as necessary for networking. However, the money dwindled faster than he expected. Weeks turned into months, and there was no distillery in sight. Henry began to grow suspicious. He had seen no progress, no signs of their dream materializing. Paul's guilt gnawed at him, but he couldn't stop. He was in too deep. Frustrated and angry, Henry began to harass Paul for repayment. He felt betrayed and humiliated. Henry had trusted Paul and his vision. Now he saw only a liar and a cheat. "I need my money back, Paul, with interest. You promised me." Henry's visits to Paul's shack became frequent and aggressive. Paul, cornered and desperate, had nothing to offer.
Please, Henry, I have nothing left. Just give me more time. I'll repay every cent, I swear.
The harassment took a toll on Paul. He couldn't escape Henry's wrath. Wherever he went, Henry's shadow loomed large. The townsfolk, once friendly, now eyed him with suspicion and disdain. Paul's world crumbled around him. He could no longer find solace in alcohol or friends. His nights were filled with nightmares and his days with fear.
I'm trying, Henry, please, just a little more time.
But Henry's heart had turned to stone. The friendship that once warmed his soul now felt like a curse. One evening, Paul made a tragic decision. The pressure was unbearable. He saw no way to repay Henry, no way to reclaim his lost honor. In a moment of despair, Paul decided to end his life. He wrote a brief note apologizing for his failures and expressing his regret. He hoped his death would bring some peace. Paul chose a lonely spot by the river, a place where they once fished together. The irony was not lost on him. He tied a rope to a sturdy tree and fashioned a noose. With tears streaming down his face, Paul took a final swig of whiskey. Henry was consumed by guilt and grief. Paul's death was a stark reminder of his own role in the tragedy. The money felt like a curse. He couldn't escape the haunting images of Paul's lifeless body. The townsfolk whispered behind his back. They blamed him for Paul's death. Henry's wealth and status offered no solace. Days turned into sleepless nights. Henry's mind was a whirlwind of regret and sorrow. He saw Paul's face everywhere, heard his voice in the silence. The whiskey that once brought them joy now tasted bitter. Henry's soul was tormented. The tale of Henry and Paul is a somber reminder of the perils of greed and the fragility of friendship. Their story, marked by dreams and desperation, ended in a double tragedy. The distillery that was meant to bring them fortune became their undoing. The money, which promised a better future, led to their deaths. Greed, like a shadow, crept into their lives and poisoned their bond. Henry's obsession with wealth blinded him to Paul's struggles. Paul's misuse of the money was driven by his desire to escape poverty. Both men were trapped by their own desires. Their friendship, once a beacon of hope, became a battleground. The town of Clearwater mourned the loss of two souls.